Hello and welcome to the Last Looks podcast, a show where we catch up with talented hairstylists and makeup artists in the film and television industry. We'll pick their super creative brains and find out all the good stuff. Join me, your host, Jamie Lee, in finding out what's what in the hair and makeup departments around the world.
And now, our feature presentation.
Today on the Last Looks podcast, I'm speaking with makeup designer Carol Rasheed. Carol chats about coming up in the industry in Orlando, Florida and Atlanta, Georgia. We discuss the importance of professional ethics in the workplace and why she started her own makeup training academy. Welcome to the Last Looks podcast, Carol.
Hi, thank you.
So good having you here.
It's good to be here, Jamie Lee. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Now, I would like you to finish this sentence for me, okay?
Okay.
Once upon a time, there was a child named Carol, and when she grew up, she wanted to be...
Makeup artist.
You did?
No, not really.
I'm like, little 5-year-old Carol wanted to be a makeup artist? That's amazing. I mean, it happens.
Oh, goodness.
But...
No, I don't think I ever thought about it, actually, until I was a teenager.
And that's the first thing that popped
Actually, the thing that popped into my mind was working in hair, doing hair for the entertainment business is what popped in my mind. And It actually popped in my mind probably when I was in my early 20s. I was like, boy, it would be great to work in entertainment doing hair. I didn't think anything. I didn't know there was such a job as a makeup artist.
Right. It's funny what you just don't really, what doesn't pop into your mind, isn't it? Like right. You just don't think that it's a job.
Exactly. So I thought, oh, I can do somebody's hair in the entertainment business. That's what my thoughts were. Like I said, never considered makeup.
Okay. So how does this journey begin then to doing makeup?
It's so interesting because, as I look back, I think about my first real job that I had working in a department store. I worked for this department store that was called Moss Brothers, and I worked in the clothing department there. I think I was maybe 18, 17, worked in the clothing department. I had a job opening for the makeup department, right? And the only reason I wanted to go work in the makeup department is because you got commission when you sold product. I didn't know anything about makeup. Had no idea it could ever lead into anything, to be honest with you.
That's awesome. So you made that move. You ended up working at the makeup counter?
I ended up working at the makeup counter, working for Fashion Fair Cosmetics, which was a Black-owned company. And I started doing makeup behind the counter and really was kind of quite good at it. I became quite good at it because back then they used to train you every 3 months. You go, they teach you all the trends that were coming in and all the new colors, and it was great. And from that experience, that's really where I initially got the thirst for doing makeup. But even with that being said, I still had no idea that I could get a job eventually and have a career in doing makeup for the film and television industry. I went to hair school in my early 20s after I, had worked. I got married. I ended up going to school to get my cosmetology license. I did that, finished school, got my license. And I don't know, something in my head one day said, I want to work in the entertainment business doing hair. And that's really where the thought came about. I started out doing hair, Jamie. Can you believe that?
Of course I can. I mean, they kind of, to me, they go hand in hand. It's just, it's a whole.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So where were you based when you were thinking about the entertainment?
I was in a little town called Winter Haven, Florida, and then I graduated and went to Orlando, which is really, I went to Orlando because I landed a job at Disney World.
Oh, cool.
And so I landed a job at Disney World working in the hair and makeup department. This was my, my doorway in my mind to get it into the entertainment industry. So Disney was the closest thing that had people that needed makeup and wigs and things of that nature. So I ended up interviewing for a job there and got hired.
That's awesome.
Working in the wig department, combing wigs and styling wigs for the entertainers that they had there. Like all the characters that were there, they
Yeah.
needed wigs and makeup.
So I guess your training just continued into the Disney World situation as well, didn't it? Because I mean, you have to recreate characters that, all the kids and everyone know from on screen.
Absolutely. And again, still even working at Disney, I had no idea that there was an opportunity to work in the film and television industry. But I think sometimes things are just divinely ordered. In my mind, I wanted to work in the entertainment business. Well, I decided to try and get myself in an environment that was kind of entertainment driven, the
Mm,
parades and things of that nature. And then that led into me doing makeup and hair for TV and film because I happened to go work for Disney, around the time that they were building the MGM studios. It had not opened yet, but they were building it. And because I had worked at that department store in the makeup
mm-hmm.
area, I ended up getting an opportunity to work on some of those very early shows that Disney produced. I think I worked like a couple of days on the Mickey Mouse Club, and they trained us. The people at Disney trained us to do, makeup and hair for TV and film. So after I got a taste of that and realized that there was opportunities to be
Mm.
able to do makeup artistry as well, that's what I really started, leaning more towards. Although I started out my real career, I think in my first job that I got, my first movie that I worked on, I was working in the hair department, and I ended up getting an opportunity to get in the union from working in the hair department from that
Okay.
project. The project was called Passenger 57 back in the I think it was in the 90s when we did that project. And I was working as an additional under a hair artist at the time. His name was Clifford Booker. He brought
Mm.
me in because they needed somebody that could work on black hair. So that's how I really ended up working on my first feature film. The first feature film that I worked on, it was non-union and it turned into a union picture. So it
Oh, that's awesome.
qualified me to apply for the union.
Yeah. I'm guessing the union, so you could be working in the hair department, but still get into the union, and that covers both hair and
Well,
makeup.
basically for 798, I'm in the 798 union, which is the New York local. And back then,
Yeah.
they actually gave me the opportunity to do makeup or hair to make the choice at the
Awesome.
time. Of course, I had a license to do hair. However, makeup was my love. So that's what I chose. That's what I tested for to get in the union. So back in those days, we used to have to test, do a ball cap and do old aging and things of that nature. They no longer
Hmm.
do that, but back then I had to do all that to prove that I could actually do makeup for the industry.
That's so cool. So were you still based in Orlando at
I
that
was still
point?
based in Orlando, actually, and I worked in the Orlando market for about 15 years before moving to my current state, Atlanta. And of course, I've been here in
Yeah.
Atlanta now for 14 years. So I've been kind of working around the industry for quite a while.
That's very cool. So I'm guessing, did you feel that change, like that shift into the union, kind of opened up more doors for you
Oh
moving
God,
forward?
absolutely. It definitely opened up more doors because at the time the union used to be really strict. Like you could not work on union pictures if you were not in the union, but you had to be in
Hmm.
the union to gain your days. It was just a tricky situation back then. It's a lot easier to get into the union. At least 798. It's still difficult, more difficult, I think, to get into 706. It's easier. I feel to get into 798. However, it did open up opportunities, but it was still very difficult. I mean, I think it was, a time where you didn't really see a lot of Black people or minorities in the union,
Hmm.
unfortunately. However, I worked my way through it myself. It was myself and Selena Miller were the two African Americans in that area that was working and that were union 798.
Yeah.
So we would work here and there, and but it was tough. I mean, it forced me to have to open up a beauty salon. I opened up one salon because it was hard to make ends meet working as a makeup artist. I'll be real honest about it in the beginning.
Yeah. I guess too, in Orlando, there's probably a limit to how much was being made there at the
Well,
time?
at the time, there was a limit to it, but it was being played up, with MGM opening and then Universal, opened
Mm.
and Nickelodeon came down and a lot of other network shows had started to film there. And so I was thinking, and a lot of us were thinking that it was going to be considered the new Hollywood. And that's what they were
Mm.
touting it as being, but it never happened. But it did open me up to be able to. I worked at Disney. I ended up leaving Disney. Like I said, I got that opportunity on Passenger 57. And then from that, I got an opportunity to go and head up the hair and makeup department for Nickelodeon Studios, who was moving into Universal at that time. I had worked with one of the then budding stars. His name was Mark Summers. I got an opportunity to work with Mark on a pilot. And he, spoke on my behalf. I went in and interviewed for the department head job for makeup and hair. At the time, at Nickelodeon, I was over the makeup department and the hair department. So I got a great opportunity to do that early on in my career. And I learned a lot because the beauty of it is that they brought in other people from New York and from different places for me to also
Mm.
train with those people. So it was great.
Oh, that's very cool. I was going to ask how because you would have got from Disney, like Disney World, you would have, the training would have been great, but also limited, I would imagine, because they have their set characters that they kind of do. So
Exactly.
before you got into the union and you had to do your test for bald capping and all that type of stuff, like how did you learn those
Well,
skills?
basically, through educating myself, I took classes.
Mm-hmm.
I also ended up getting on another show that was called Superboy, which I
Mm-hmm.
can't even remember what year that came out, but I worked on that particular project for a whole season. I think I was making $485 a week back then. That was my check.
Yeah.
Working 12, 10, 12, 14-hour days, my check was a solid
Oh,
$485 a week.
rough.
So, and I thought that was amazing that I was getting this great
Yeah.
opportunity. And I got a lot of hands on training during that time. I got an opportunity.
And you loved what you were
Yeah,
doing. So, makes all the difference, doesn't it?
absolutely. So I took that on. I worked on Superboy for 6 months. Back then, shows used to be really long. So I worked on that show, got a little bit more under my belt and just continued on. I just never stopped working to learn and kept trying to, make connections and just trying to grow my craft. And back then
Mm.
in the day, we did, even though on Superboy I did makeup, but I would also, start to do, commercials. I started making connection with other people that were also had budding careers like producers and production managers and people like that. And we all kind of started out together. So when they started doing commercials, they would hire me to come in and do the hair and makeup for the commercials. So it was just a continuation of learning and growing and working.
That's awesome. So, it sounds like you kind of like hitting jobs reasonably quickly.
I think I did get jobs quickly, but I as I think about it, I got jobs quickly, but I may get a job and work for 2 months and then not work for 4 months. So it was
Mm,
very
yeah.
difficult to sustain myself. At the time I had a young kid. I had just recently gotten divorced. So all these things were contributing factors in me having to figure out how I was going to survive.
Struggle.
So so with that
Yeah.
being said, I was like, okay, I have a license over here to do hair. I may as well open up a business doing hair, and then I can do that. I can make my own hours and then go do commercials when I need to do commercials. So I always had a plan, that I kind of
Mm.
follow in order for in order for me to be able to survive. But it was not easy. Let me tell you, the first few years of me being an independent artist, it was difficult.
Mm.
But like I said, I would pick up jobs here and there. And I had a friend of mine, God rest her soul now, her name is Linda Jean Tucker. She was a hairstylist. And she actually helped me get on this show called Thunder in Paradise. It was with Hulk Hogan. I ended up getting on that project after I opened up the Carol's Barber and Beauty Salon. So I would go work on the show during the week. And then on the weekend, I would go to my salon just to keep it moving. Because like I said, I would work and then, I work a month here and then have 2 months off, or not by my design, but I had to have something as a backup.
This conversation is really reminding me. I feel like I had a similar experience working in New Zealand, like coming up in New Zealand, because it's not super busy. The TV and film work comes in waves. So luckily I did have, hairdressing to fall back on in salons or barbershops or whoever would kind of take me when I was out of film work. But I always used to say that, like, I'd finish a film job, I'd go work part-time casually at barbershop, and it would get to 3 months, maybe 4 months, and I would be pretty positive. Yep, something's going to turn up, something's going to happen, it's going to happen, something's going to start shooting. And I wouldn't get that phone call until I was almost in tears, thinking it's never going to happen again. It's never going to happen again. And as soon as I got to that point, the next day, I feel like the phone would ring and it would be like, oh, hey, we're starting prepping on this, whatever. And I'd be like, oh, thank goodness.
That's how it was back in the days, man. It was hard.
Yeah.
It really was hard. It was not an easy thing. People have it so much easier and they don't realize, the way in which a lot of us had to come up working. It was a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that people can just jump from job to job to job now is pretty amazing.
Do you think it's going to stay that way though?
I don't know. I'm just glad that I had that past experience to know that when I'm working, I got into a mindset of saving money. So when I was working and being paid well, I was putting stuff aside for those times that were quiet. And that habit hasn't really broken. So I think it's a good thing to think about.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell. Let me tell you, that's what I tell when I train, students. I always say that, when you work, pay yourself first. Whenever you get a check, put away something, save money until it hurts you. You're right. So I'm with the mindset like you, Jamie, where you have to save, because it's been too many days where I didn't know if I was going to have money to pay my light bill. So early on in my career, so I had to make a choice, do I pay my light bill or my water bill,
Yeah. So advice given to you, so you're coming up at that time, is there anything that any of your mentors said to you that has stuck with you?
I'm not sure if one of my mentors said this to me, but I know that this was said to me and it kind of stuck with me, and it has stuck with me throughout my career. And I know that I've shared this with other people that perhaps I've mentored, is for them to never get too comfortable in their position. I feel like I don't ever want to get comfortable working for myself or working for somebody else, because when you get comfortable, you let things slide by. And I think that it's important not to get comfortable, to always stay focused on what you're doing and try to be better.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that has stuck with me throughout my career. I don't ever get comfortable with people. I don't get comfortable with, with situations. I don't get comfortable with my abilities. I always try to better myself. Right.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. It's so true.
That's true.
It is so true.
And I remember telling someone that was working on my team many years ago on a show, and I said to her, I said, listen, don't ever let yourself get too comfortable. Sometimes I think in our business, people can, become very friendly, and they think that they, understand you and they're working for you or whatever. And they think they, can do certain things. And it's like, no, I'm still your boss. Or I'm still, you're still working with somebody in relation, is that I don't ever want to get so comfortable with someone, that I forget to be completely 100% respectful of them always in my position.
Yeah. And just, staying professional.
So yeah, that's the thing that I think that was some of the advice that was given to me. Don't ever get too comfortable in any situation.
Yeah, I think it you can easily kind of slip into that just with the hours that we do,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the close working quarters, and the trailers, and just being up in everybody's face all the time. I think you need to remind yourself of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, looking at your resume, you've done such a wide range of projects. What would have to be a couple of your favorites, Carol?
Ooh, a couple of my favorite projects over the years. One project that I really enjoyed a lot was the Henrietta Lack story, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
that I enjoyed that story so much because I was not aware of it. I was not
Mm-hmm.
aware that Henrietta Lacks, led to a breakthrough that changed the face of medicine forever.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So I think that story really opened my eyes and made me understand that this is why television and film is so important and so interesting, is that it gets an opportunity, and we, yourself, myself, people that are working in the industry, we get an opportunity to help tell our sides of the story through our craft in regards
Mhm.
to things that are true stories, that will live forever on, even after I'm gone. You know what I'm saying? My grandkids get an opportunity to watch something like Henrietta Lack's movie, that is a part of history, that was, a
Mm.
real story that happened. So that story in itself was very fascinating to me, and it was very educational for me. I think it'll be educational for a lot of people that get an opportunity to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of mind blowing.
To think about that, right?
Yeah.
One of the other shows too that I did very early on in my career. It was one of the, probably like maybe the third or fourth show that I did with a studio audience. It was called Home Matters, and we
Mm.
shot with a live audience, and I just had so much fun on that show. I feel like it's something that really made me realize that I was so happy in the career path that I had chosen, that I was, going to work every day, getting an opportunity to paint faces, on people that you become close with people when you are working in their space, in their face space, as I like to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that show, I remember, just have very fond memories of that. So those are the two
That's
shows
very
that
cool.
really stick out in my mind in regards to where I kind of felt like a lot of satisfaction from my opportunity of working, and and just being able to work in that space.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've only ever done one, I just day played for one
Hmm.
day on a sitcom, and it was so eye opening because I'd never seen, like, we don't make them in New Zealand, so I'd never
Oh,
seen the live audience come in for this and that, and that just how it was shot was incredible to me. I was just like, wow, this is like completely different.
yeah.
It's
That isn't that
amazing.
amazing though, when you get an opportunity and to realize that you actually get paid for being there.
Yeah, it's always a bonus.
Yes, that's always a bonus, right? To recognize that. That is so interesting. That's such a great question, because, I guess when I never really think about the stuff that I work on, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
but in
Hmm.
thinking about it, you help me really, really look back and think about it, and think about why I loved the Henrietta Lack story, and why I love the show Home Matters. Is they had this lady on there. Her name was Susan Powell. She was an ex American beauty queen, and I don't know. I
Mm.
just had a great relationship with her on that show, and I just I enjoyed it. We get an opportunity to do
Yeah.
some fun stuff sometimes and work with some fun people, that have big hearts. So that's always so great.
And I think when asked, like, what are some of your favorites, it can be, for the reason, can be from anything from what you've said to there may be just one specific makeup that you really enjoyed doing,
Yeah,
or one person that you thoroughly enjoyed working with, or it was the location, or the story
yeah,
of the script, or so it's we've got a wide range of things to
yeah. It
love, I think.
varies, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, Carol, I want to talk a little bit about how you kind of approach things as a head of department when it comes to character development and design. So, I don't know if there's a specific project that you'd want to reference to, or just how you kind of start your job. So you've got the script and you're reading it, and just, I guess, how you work out what you think what direction you might go with your characters.
Well, I tell you, that is a great question with character, development. And I think I have to say that it really depends on the project in terms of how I approach it. If I'm doing, a biopic or something of a likeness of someone, that has lived before. I remember doing the TLC movie. It was a biopic that we did about the musical group TLC, which one of the members actually had passed by the time we did this particular movie. And two of the ladies from the group TLC actually served as executive producers on the project. So of course, when you're doing something of that nature where you're having to go back and look at and study and do your research and and understand the nuances of particular people, how they wore their hair, how their makeup was worn, what kind of nails did they have any tattoos on their bodies, all these things. You have to really do your homework and your research so that you can get it right, particularly if it's on somebody that has lived before or still living. So that approach, you go to the library, in my case with the TLC movie, I even went back and listened to their music. I looked at all their album covers. I looked at, I talked to the actual two remaining living partners that were in the group TLC. It was just so much that went into it. I talked to the makeup artists, that they had during the time that they were really popular. She told me specifically, what lips she used on them. So there's a lot of research that goes into any of the work that we do.
Wow, you're so lucky to have had those contacts.
Yeah, I know.
That's awesome. That doesn't
happen often, So like I was saying, each project is different in terms of the approach. But many times, of course, we read the script. I usually will break the script down, and take out the characters, who they are, their ages, if they have it in the script, what they're supposed to look like, if they give a description of them. I write all that stuff down and really start going from there.
That's very cool. Is that an enjoyable part of what you do, kind of getting to that point and then working with the cast members, costume director?
I think the more fascinating part for me is actually, kind of understanding what the character is, and then also hearing from the perspective of the director, hearing from the perspective of the actor, hearing from the perspective of the designer. And taking all those things and creating a character, because I think that every single person, that is going to attribute to what the final product is going to look like are the people that you want to be communicating with. So I always find that to be fascinating. I think that it really helps me really understand truly who the character is and what is expected of the character to be by, involving the director and sometimes even the producer and, the actor and the designer. We all kind of work, very closely together. I even talk to, the DP many times to see how, it's going to be lit, if it's going to be, something that's a moody look, or, the lighting really can affect how things read. So all those things are really, really, fascinating to me. It makes our work so interesting to me and makes it more dimensional.
Yeah, I think so too. It also helps me, I think, sometimes with certain characters, I might have a bit of a creative block with them. I'm just like, I just don't even know. So having just a tiny, just every now and again, I think it's when there's just so many characters in something and it's just like, and they have, you're reading the script, they just really don't give a description of what this the feel for this person is. And even after maybe meeting, it's not until those meetings start happening that you get that input, and it's just like, oh yeah, no, okay, this has kickstarted me. I know what direction we're going in now. But immediately it doesn't always, I can't always visualize it first pop. So I think having all that input from everybody else is, I have to have it.
It makes such a difference, right? Yeah, it really does. So I'm always excited about that. Listen, Jamie, I hope that somebody can interview you on some of the work that you've done, because your work, let me just tell you, I don't want to talk about the work that I've seen you do, but your work is so freaking incredible. It is. It's amazing.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, that's very
sweet
of
you.
You.
True. So you're gonna have to interview your own self on the Last Look podcast.
I figure I've had a few people offer to interview me, and I'm just like, maybe when it's the last episode of the show, last one ever, can go out with me.
That work you have in those hands are amazing.
That's awesome. Hey, so talking about like heading departments and in that kind of that position, what do you think are some of the skills that you really need to have to kind of knock that out of the park to be a successful head of department, really?
Well, to be a successful head of a department, I think coming in, the department head should have their own great attitude. This is something, for myself, I require from my team. And I always say that I want in my team what I have in myself. So, the things that are important for me to have as a department head is, number one, to have ethics. It's really something, that I pride myself on is having ethics, having the utmost professionalism, towards my, fellow artists, towards the PA that's working, towards the AD. I always maintain my professionalism. And so I require that of myself, and I look for that in my team as well. Coming to work every day with a great attitude has been something that I pride myself on. I come in and I want to be happy. I want to feel good. Not to say that every day is going to be a great day, because that's just unrealistic. But I think, having a good attitude, will prevail always. So those are some of the things that I think as a department head, it's important to have. It's important to also have great leadership skills. I mean, when you are running a department, you have to have a strong leadership skill in order to be able to effectively manage people, because ultimately that's what we're doing, is managing. If you're a good department head, you need to be able to also delegate. Like, as a department head, I can't do everything. So I find people to come on my team that may know how to do things that I'm not so great at, and I try to have everything represented in my team members that I feel that I need for that show, right? So I'm not a strong special effects person, but guess what? If I'm doing a show that has effects in it, I'm going to have somebody on my team that's their thing. They can do that. So it's understanding, being a department head and being in a leadership role. It really does require that you understand how to staff your project, and what to look for in your team to be able to effectively manage and run a good department.
Absolutely. So you got all your bases covered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have all your bases covered. And if you don't have all your bases covered, as a department head, you really need to be able to assess whatever the needs are, for the department and for the production, and make it happen, whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. I want to go back a couple of beats there and just kind of expand on this professionalism, because I don't want to sound like a total negative Nancy, but I don't understand what seems to be happening. I feel a lack of coming into the industry. I mean, personally, I feel like I learnt my professionalism through working in the salon and had a boss there that was just like, okay, this is how this works. You greet your client, just being a polite human being. And I guess it also comes into what you were saying before about not getting too comfortable, maybe.
Right.
There's so many times I've just seen behavior that I'm like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, this is a
Mhm.
workplace. Like, no, that conversation,
Right. No, it's true.
or just behavior. It's just like, I don't
Well,
understand. I don't know how. I mean, talking about it, of course, helps, and through teaching and training and all that type of thing. But it's interesting that some people don't naturally kind of come into the workplace with that
well,
mindset.
I think it's so interesting that you say that and you ask and kind of ponder on that question. I think so much of it has to do with home training, honestly. I
Mm,
think that, there are certain things that you learn as a youngster that,
mm,
you know, in terms of how you, present yourself, right? In public and
mm,
with other people. I think, particularly speaking to the TV and film industry, I think what is happening, in our industry at this time, there's so, particularly here in Atlanta, which is where I'm based, there is
mm,
so much opportunity available in this space. And I hear it's happening all around the country. I don't think it's just happening in Atlanta, but I think that people are really getting, to move up a lot quicker without
mm,
having the formal training that is required to really make you completely excellent in your profession, right? So, and I have to remind people sometimes. I mean, even recently, I looked at how some people come to work dressed. They come, to work with hot pants on. If you can bend over and
mm,
see your behind, uh
mm,
your butt cheeks, that's not appropriate for work. you know
mm,
if you're wearing something so tight, on your top part of your body to where everything is exposed, that is not looking professional. You're wearing,
mm,
shirts that, your armpits are out and we can see hair underneath your arms. That's, to me, that's not appropriate. For some people, they're okay with it. Knowing what kind of conversations to have on set is another thing. Understanding, protocol and really what your place is in regards to whatever your position is. All those things I think are getting lost. And
mm,
I think part of the reason that they're getting lost is because people have so much accessibility. And it's not that they're being required. I think when we look at production, and when I look at production, say, specifically in this year now versus, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, there were just certain
mm.
things that you couldn't do in work, as a professional. So I
Yeah.
think that production, number one, has gotten a lot looser in terms of what their requirements are for people. It's all now about the bottom dollar, about the bottom line, which is the dollar. And it's unfortunate.
Mm,
It really is. I think that as leaders in the industry, you're a leader, I'm a leader in the industry. I think that we have to really try our best to educate people when they're on set. If we get an opportunity, it's very
mm,
difficult sometimes to do that
yeah.
because when you're on set, you're in it. You don't really have time to
Mm,
train people. So I always encourage people to educate themselves and get educated from people that have done the things that you want to do, not somebody that just started like you did 2 years ago. Get educated by real professionals that have worked in every level in the job. They've worked in background, they've worked out in the field, they've done commercials, they've done, film, they've done TV, they've worked in every capacity as a third, as a fourth, as a key, and
yeah.
possibly as a department head if they're teaching classes. So those
Mm,
things I think are really critical for people to understand, right?
yeah.
So I hope that helps. That
That's
was a
so
long
true.
answer.
No, no, but it's good. I knew you'd have some insight into it.
But it's
You can tell because you conduct yourself in a professional manner,
oh,
and
thank
it's
you.
I think these days it's so much more noticeable because it's not everybody behaving like that. So when you see it, you notice it and you appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you, Jamie. That's very kind. I appreciate that so much. Well, I feel like it's important. I mean, we're working in an industry, an industry that I've had a very blessed and successful career, and I want to give back and want other people that are coming behind me to have the same kind of success or even better success. And I think that
Hmm.
it's definitely a way to work your way up to have longevity, right?
Yeah.
Because I think at some point, if you are an ultimate person that's not professional, at some point, your unprofessionalism is going to catch up with you at some point.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, as people learn and as they grow, it's really important, to share how important it is to have ethics, to have integrity, and to
Mm.
walk with professionalism and understand, what you know and what you don't know. And if I don't know how to do something, I'm the first person to say, you know what, I don't know how to do that. So let me figure it out. I'll get back
Yeah.
to you with it. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to go in and do something that I clearly don't know anything about. That's not really working in integrity. So yeah, I think that those things are becoming less and less. I don't know, I just feel like those things are missing sometimes.
Yeah.
All
True.
right, I'm sure you've come
But
across that working all over the country, right?
yeah. I almost, for a little while there, I wondered if it was in areas where there is a lot of work, where people don't have to feel like they have to shine
Mm-hmm.
bright to get a job
Mm-hmm.
because the work is just always available. So, say they're day playing and they come in and help you for the day and just are pretty lazy and, kind of just do the
Mm-hmm.
minimal amount of what they need to do and don't even do it super well.
Mm-hmm.
But to them, it maybe doesn't even matter because you can say, oh, I don't actually need you for the rest of the week now.
Yeah.
Apologies.
No.
They don't care because they're like, nah, I've got somebody else calling me to work tomorrow so on something else. So they just jump onto that. And it's kind of heartbreaking to
Yeah, and
see.
I've seen that, and I've experienced that many times. And
Yeah.
the great thing about it, though, Jamie Lee, I think that when you run a department a certain way, whether that be a great way or whether it be
Mm.
an unprofessional way, I think that the people that come, that are willing to come work on your team, they know that if they're coming to work on your team, they've got to at least act like they're being professional.
Mm. Yeah.
And sometimes you have the experience where people pretend that they're being professional, but eventually who they really are is going to come out. And people, I don't know, people come to work, they have different agendas. They want to build
Mm.
their platforms, or they want to do whatever it is that they want to do. You know what I mean? I think that
Mm.
when you walk with a certain level of professionalism, as a department head, I think that people sometimes know that when they come to work for you, they got to be on their best. Just like
Yeah.
the people that they know, as department heads that are slackers. They feel like they can come on that person's job and slack.
Yeah.
So
They lead by example.
absolutely. So it's unfortunate. I'll be interested to know, do you feel that it's like that where there's a lot of work, or have you seen it like that in places that the work is a little bit more competitive?
Coming from New Zealand and Australia, where it's a bit more competitive, I suppose, because there's not as much work, people really strive to know their stuff and work
Hmm.
hard and be seen for doing good work.
Hmm.
And I feel like in places where there's so much work, it's the first time I'd kind of seen that behavior.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying across the
Hmm.
board. It's just, every now and again you're just like, what is your
Hmm.
deal? But, that's that it takes all types to, come together and get stuff done. But it was interesting to me. I just kind of was wondering if it was,
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe they just have a bad day that day, or maybe they're kind of losing their passion for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
It's like you don't know really at the end of the day what it
Yeah.
is, but I guess I just thought maybe if there's a little more competition out there that people would kind of strive to produce better work and be a little bit more on it.
Right, right. That's
But
so
I don't
interesting
know.
though. That's a very interesting topic because I listen. I'm sure you've come across people in the industry. I know I certainly have. That they may not be great at what they do, but they
Mm,
are great at promoting themselves, right? I think that's the best thing to use. They're great at promoting themselves so they can go from job to job to job. You have people that are like that, they go from job to job to job, not necessarily doing such a great job, but just, adding notches to their belt. You have folks that are in our industry that work all the time like that, because they know how to promote themselves and they're
mm-hmm.
nice and they're easy to get along, and those people tend to work all the time. So it's
Yeah.
just interesting just how our industry is and the direction in which it's going, and hopefully people like yourself and myself and people, other people that are out there can really represent strongly, in hopes that we can bring the level of excellence back to our industry, particularly in the makeup and hair sector. I think it's a lot of people have it, but then some people don't. But I think that the more of us that continue to fight to be better, to be stronger, to stay and remain professional, to be ethical, to walk with integrity, I think that those things will weigh out the negative.
I love it.
That's the hope.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. That's awesome. I love it. So going like expanding on that and just knowing that in our line of work we're always learning
Oh
stuff.
God, yeah.
What is something new that you have learned recently that's kind of got you excited or is just plain handy to know now?
What have I learned new that's exciting? Oh my God, that is an interesting question. I thought about that question and I'm trying to figure out what have I learned new. I think I take things sometimes for granted. I learn so much stuff every day. I really do. So it's hard to lock one thing in my head that I've learned. Honestly, I tell you what I have been learning is how to do this electronic paperwork stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
We used
Yeah.
to get the deal memos all in paper. You write in what you wanted and what you don't want. Now you get
Mm-hmm.
everything electronically. You don't have space to write nothing.
It's just how they want it.
I'm like, wait a minute. I can't say down here, no, you got to pay me for this if you guys throw this in. There's no space to put
Yeah.
that now.
Yeah.
So what I'm learning is really how to use technology more. So that's something that I'm kind of enjoying a little bit more in terms of how to use technology to make my job easier and to make my team's job easier.
Yeah, no, it's a big I mean it's a big step. It's a big change that's been coming for a while and it's this whole paperless situation that's going on. So I think we're all in the same boat learning that one.
I tell you what, though, man, it has definitely been a learning curve with it, but it's just like anything else, time changes. So we have to get on with it. All right.
Mm.
So in my mind, we have to get on with it.
Speaking of just education and learning and things, tell me a little bit about what you do as a teacher, as a
Well,
mentor.
as a mentor, as a teacher, I got really excited a few years back. I actually set up my TV and film makeup academy.
That's awesome.
And I wanted to set up a makeup academy specific to television and film because we have places out here that teach makeup, but I wanted to do something
Hmm.
that was geared towards people that really wanted to learn the inside outs of the TV and film industry, of makeup artistry,
Hmm.
right? So I started this academy to kind of talk to people and to speak in regards to what you and I were talking about earlier, really sharing knowledge with people, the real information that people generally don't tell you, because they don't
Yeah.
have time on jobs, so I teach about the
Mm.
protocols and things of that nature and etiquette the processes, industry processes and terminology and all that stuff that is required for you to be able to move in that world. So yeah, I do usually week-long classes to share specifically for people that are coming into the industry, but it's also for people that are newer to the industry that want to learn things that will set them apart, and help them grow within the industry. And I'm always mentoring people. Listen, I'm one of those people, like, I will share with you whatever knowledge I have if you just ask. If you need to know something and you want to know something and you have the time and I have the time, I will share it with you. So I felt the need to start an academy because I get so many inquiries, in my DMs from people getting my email address about how to get into TV and film makeup artistry and hair. I get inquiries about it all the time. I started the academy to kind of put everything all in one place and to have a formal training of which. So yeah, education to me is really the key. I still learn. Every day I'm learning something new and it's great. And I don't ever want to stop learning. When I stop learning, it'll be when I'm dead.
Yeah, it's over. Close the book on that. It's done. How boring would that be? Oh my God.
So yeah, look out for classes. I'm going to have some classes the last quarter of this year. And hopefully we can put my TV and Film Makeup Academy website on there and people can go in and look at, when the classes will be held. Just look out.
Yeah, awesome.
Between that and my Instagram page, Carol_Rasheed.
I love it, lady. But what I wanted to ask was a question that I ask everybody.
Mm-hmm.
If I have you in your trailer, you've got everything set up, you're about to start your day, and I walk in and I take away one tool or product from you, what is going to stress you out? What am I going to take away from you that you're like, I can't work without that? What are you doing?
My palette paper.
You're like, for the love of God, don't take my palette paper.
Anything else you can have. My palette paper, I got to have it because I do all my mixing on that.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, goodness. This has been so great.
That is awesome. And one person you'd love to hear on the podcast?
You know what? Has Valley been on your podcast?
No, but she's lined up to have a chat with me.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
I think Valley would be somebody very interesting, and also Robert Stevenson. I don't know. He was like the first Black male allowed into 706 union out there.
Does he do hair?
He does hair. He's retired now, though.
Oh, well, he's got all the time in the world to talk to me. Although I almost feel like when I retire, I'm going to be busier than when I'm working because I'm going to be like catching up on all those things I wanted to do.
Goodness. And it's so interesting because I've never met him, but someone that I mentored, actually, Malika, she actually is friends with his family, but I've always thought that he had a very interesting story.
That's
Robert
very cool.
Stevenson. I'd love to hear, being the first African-American male to be allowed into 706. So I don't know if it was him or either Bernadine Anderson, she just recently died. She was the first African-American female to be allowed into 706. And she had a career, in 1972, where she apprenticed at Warner Brothers for like 3 years. So that kind of stuff I'm interested in hearing about.
Yeah, absolutely. Some history.
So, yeah. Valley, Robert Stevenson.
Amazing. Yes, Carol, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for even thinking about me to be on your podcast. I feel great about it.
That's awesome, lady. Thank you.
My pleasure, Jamie Lee.
For links to see more about our guests, go to our Instagram at The Last Looks Podcast or our website, thelastlookspodcast.com. If you want to keep up with new episodes being released, be sure to subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, or any podcast streaming platform. And remember, if you're enjoying the show, share it. The Last Looks Podcast would like to thank Brett Stanley and Sabrina Castro. The song Fun Time by DJ Quads. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
That's a wrap, people.